The smell reached me before anything else did. Not the alarm, I hadn't set one, it was Saturday. Not the light. The curtains in my room did their job. The smell. Butter in a pan, something sweet underneath it, and coffee, real coffee. Not the kind I made which was functional and adequate, but the kind that announces itself down a hallway. I lay there for a moment with my eyes still closed and thought, that's not mine. Which meant it was hers. Which meant she was up before 9 on a Saturday, which she had told me in month 1 was not something she did. Which meant she had made an exception. Which meant, following this chain of reasoning to its logical end, that something had changed between last night and this morning, or last night had changed something that had been building for longer than last night. I got up. She was at the stove when I came out of my room. She had her back to me, and she was doing several things at once with the competence of someone who had planned ahead, and there was a place set at the kitchen table. One place, mine, with a coffee already poured, and the whole kitchen had the particular warmth of a room that has been occupied and cared for. She heard me come in. She didn't turn around. "Sit down," she said. "It's almost ready." I sat down. She brought the plate over. Eggs, toast, something with fruit she had clearly prepared before the eggs, the kind of breakfast that takes longer than it looks because of the sequencing. And she set it in front of me, and she stepped back, and she looked at me with an expression I had not seen in 7 months of living with her. Not nervous, certain, and beneath the certainty, something that had been waiting for the surface for a while. She said, "I've been waiting to do this for you. Not I made you breakfast. Not I was up early anyway." 7 words, in the specific order that removes every available excuse, that makes the statement mean exactly what it says. I looked at the plate, then at her, then at the coffee she had poured before I was awake, then back at her. She held my gaze with everything that sentence contained. I said, "Sit down." She said, "It's your breakfast." "Sit down," I said, "and tell me how long." She sat down. "My name is Ben Ashford. I am 33 years old. I work in urban landscape architecture, designing the outdoor spaces between buildings, the parks and plazas and tree-lined corridors that people move through without particularly noticing. Which is, I have come to understand, the highest compliment the work can receive. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment that is well lit and slightly too large for one person, and had been too large for one person for 8 months before I found a roommate. I was not looking for anything when I found her. I was looking for someone to split the rent with, which is its own kind of search, and does not typically carry romantic expectations. Her name was Phoebe Strand. She was 29. She worked as a music therapist. She used sound and rhythm with people who needed something language couldn't reach, which she had explained once in a way that made it sound both practical and like one of the more important things a person could do. She played piano. Not often, and never for an audience. She had a keyboard in her room with headphones. And I knew she played because sometimes I could hear the faint mechanical sound of the keys being pressed even through the headphones. Just the physical contact without the music. She had moved in 7 months ago after answering my listing with a message that was direct and contained exactly the information I had asked for, and nothing extra. I had thought, reading it, that this was someone who understood what was being asked. She had come to see the apartment on a Tuesday evening, looked at every room with the systematic attention of someone who was genuinely assessing rather than just being polite about it. Asked 3 questions that were the right 3 questions, and said she'd take it. I had said okay. She had moved in the following Saturday. She was a quiet person in the specific way that musicians are sometimes quiet, not absent, but listening. Always slightly more attuned to the ambient sounds of a space than other people were. She noticed things. She had mentioned in month 2 that the refrigerator had a hum that cycled every 4 minutes, and I had never noticed the refrigerator had a hum. She noticed when I was working late by a quality of the light under my door. I had found this out when she left tea outside my door on a Thursday evening without knocking, and when I came out the next morning and thanked her, she said, simply, "Your light was on until 2. She had a small wooden box on her kitchen counter that held her recipe cards. Not a phone, not a tablet, actual cards, handwritten, in a script that was precise and slightly musical in its spacing. She cooked from them with the same attention she brought to everything, unhurried, deliberate, in the right sequence. I had seen her consult a card for things she clearly already knew how to make, and I had understood eventually that the cards were not memory aids, but a kind of ritual, the act of doing something correctly in the right order. The existing dynamic between us had been the comfortable kind that can become, without any single decision being made, something more than comfortable. We shared the kitchen the way people share kitchens when they are both capable of it, with consideration and without ownership. We had developed small courtesies that neither of us had proposed. She made extra whenever she cooked and left the remainder labeled in the refrigerator. I replaced things I finished without being asked. On Sunday evenings, we tended to end up in the living room at the same time, and this had become, in the gradual way, a thing we both arranged toward, without acknowledging the arrangement. I had not examined this too closely. I had the specific skill of a person who is good at noticing other people's spaces and somewhat less practiced at examining his own. She had a way of saying necessary things and not saying the unnecessary ones, which meant that when she said something, it tended to have the weight of something that had been considered before being said, and I had learned to receive things she said with more attention than I gave most people. Because she did not waste words. She had not wasted 7 of them that morning. I could feel those 7 words rearranging something. The previous evening had been a Friday. We had both been home, she earlier than usual, me around 7, and we had made dinner together in the particular way we made dinner together, which had evolved from 2 people politely sharing a kitchen into something more like actual collaboration, a silent negotiation of tasks that resolved itself without requiring discussion. She had been quieter than usual, not withdrawn, present, but turned slightly inward, the way a person is when they are holding something and have not decided yet what to do with it. At some point she had sat at the kitchen table while I finished the dishes, and she had the recipe box in front of her. But she was not looking at it. She was looking at the table. I dried my hands and I leaned against the counter, and I said, "Are you all right?" She looked up. The pause before she answered was longer than usual, not hesitation, the other kind, the one that meant she was deciding whether to say the true version. "Yes," she said. And then, "I've been thinking about something." "What something?" I said. She looked at the recipe box. She ran her thumb along the edge of it once, the way she handled things when she was choosing her approach. "Nothing urgent," she said. "I'll figure it out." She got up and said goodnight and went to her room. I had stood in the kitchen and thought about the length of that pause, and I had thought about it again when I went to bed, and I had not slept especially well, and I had told myself this was unrelated. I have poor survival instincts around women who touch the edge of things when they're thinking. In the morning, the smell reached me before the alarm. She sat. She put her hands around the second coffee, hers, which she had poured while she was cooking, and left on the counter, and she looked at the table, and then at me. 7 months, she said. I had asked how long. She was answering. Almost from the beginning, she said. I noticed, in the first month, that you leave for work before you've eaten properly. You have coffee and sometimes something else, but not a real breakfast. And I thought about it. She paused. The considered kind. I thought about making you breakfast. And then I thought about why I was thinking about that, and I didn't have an answer I was comfortable with, so I filed it. You filed it, I said. I do that, she said. With things I don't know what to do with yet. And last night, I said. She looked at her coffee. Last night I was sitting at the table and I realized I had been filing the same thing for 7 months, she said. And that at some point filing becomes the same as deciding not to decide, which is itself a decision, and I wasn't sure I wanted to keep making it. I looked at the breakfast she had made, the sequencing of it, the fruit first, which had to be prepared in advance, then the eggs, then the toast at the right moment so it wouldn't go cold. She had been up before I was awake, planning the order of things. The recipe box, I said. She looked up. Last night, I said. You were looking at the table, not the box. I know the recipe, she said. I've known it for 7 months. Something in my chest did what things do in chests when a sentence lands in the right place. Phoebe, I said. You haven't eaten, she said. It'll get cold. Phoebe. She looked at me. The expression she'd had when she came to the table with the plate was still there. Certain, and underneath the certainty, something patient, something that had been patient for a long time, and had decided this morning that patience had done what patience could do. I noticed things, she said. I'm not explaining myself, I'm just saying that I noticed things, and I noticed you. From the beginning. The way you leave in the morning and what you look like when you come back at the end of a good day versus a hard one, the light under your door. The way you replace things without being asked. She stopped. I notice a lot of things about you and I have been very organized about where I put them. The file, I said. It got quite large, she said. I put my hand on the table. Not across it, just there, available. She looked at it. I don't want to make this strange, she said. If I've read something wrong, you haven't, I said. She went still. The tea, I said. On Thursday nights, when my light is on late. Yes, she said. You've done it 11 times, I said. I counted. Not out loud. I counted because each time I came out and saw it, I thought about why you'd done it, and the answer I kept arriving at was the one I didn't know what to do with. So you filed it, she said. I filed it, I said. She looked at my hand on the table. Then she put hers over it, the way someone places something they have been holding, carefully, in the place it was meant to go. The refrigerator hum, I said. Every 4 minutes, she said. I started listening for it, I said, after you told me. I lie awake sometimes, and I count the intervals. It's ridiculous. It's not ridiculous, she said. I listened to the refrigerator because you told me about it, I said. That's at least a little ridiculous. She was smiling now, not the full version, but the one that arrived first, the slight one. The one I had seen 40 or 50 times in 7 months and had been putting somewhere without examining where. Your breakfast is cold, she said. I don't care about the breakfast, I said. I made it properly, she said. The sequence matters. Phoebe, I said. I will eat the breakfast. I want to eat the breakfast. I'm going to eat the breakfast in a moment. In a moment, she said. In a moment, I said. First, she looked at me with 7 months of organized noticing and a breakfast going cold between us and her hand over mine on the table, and I thought about the light under my door and the tea outside it, and the recipe she had known for 7 months, and the specific way she had said I've been waiting to do this for you, and I thought, there is no version of this I have misread. I moved my chair around the table corner, which was not far. She didn't move back. I put my other hand against the side of her face, and she turned into it with the small, decisive motion of someone who has been waiting for the direction to be given so they could go. I kissed her with the full awareness that she had been up before me, preparing something in the right sequence, and I had been counting tea, deliveries, and refrigerator intervals, and both of us had built very organized files about the other for 7 months, and none of that had ever been. Just practical. She pulled back. Her hand was still on mine. "The eggs," she said. "The eggs. I did them properly," she said. "It would be a waste." "It would be a waste," I said. I moved my chair back. I ate the breakfast. She watched me eat it with the expression of someone whose sequence had gone correctly. And she drank her coffee, and the Saturday morning came through the kitchen window at its unhurried pace, and the refrigerator hummed on its 4-minute cycle, and I counted one interval without meaning to. 4 minutes, I said. She smiled. The full version. I had not seen the full version before, or I had seen the beginning of it dozens of times, but not the complete arrival, not the whole thing. It was remarkable. I made a note of it in what I understood was now a file I was no longer going to pretend I wasn't keeping. "You're counting the refrigerator," she said. "You told me to," I said. "I told you it existed," she said. "Same thing," I said. She shook her head, but the smile stayed. She got up to get more coffee, and on the way back she stopped beside me and put her hand briefly on my shoulder. The lightest possible contact, the kind that is chosen rather than accidental, and then she sat back down. We stayed at that table until 11. The plates went cold, and the coffee got refilled, and the morning did what mornings do in kitchens where something has just changed, and both people are in the quiet, pleasant process of adjusting to the change. The tea kept coming. This was something I noticed in the weeks that followed, that the Thursday evenings hadn't stopped. The light still went on late sometimes, and the tea still appeared. Except now she knocked, briefly, before she left it, and I started opening the door. And the tea became the occasion rather than the gesture, and she would come in and sit in the chair in the corner while I finished whatever I was finishing, and we would talk until the tea went cold. She showed me the recipe box in the second month after the breakfast. Not all the cards, just one, held out across the kitchen table. I recognized the recipe before I saw the title. She had written it in the precise musical spacing of her handwriting, and at the top she had written the date, and the date was 5 weeks after she'd moved in. "You wrote it down," I said. "I write things down when I want to do them," she said. "I didn't know if I was going to." "But you kept the card," I said. "I keep all the cards," she said. "Even the ones I don't use." I looked at the date, then at her. 6.5 months, I said. "Almost," she said. "The file was very organized," I said. "I'm an organized person," she said. I put the card back in the box. I closed the lid. I thought about all the Saturdays between that date and the Saturdays she had gotten up early, and I thought about the particular patience of someone who writes the recipe down and doesn't make it, and keeps the card anyway. "Why that morning?" I said. Specifically, she was quiet for a moment. The considered pause. "I woke up early," she said, "and I lay there and I thought about the recipe card, which I do sometimes. And I thought, today, not because anything had changed, just because I had been patient long enough, and patience at some point becomes the same as waiting for something that isn't going to walk through the door on its own. I thought about that. I was going to say something," I said. I had been planning to say something. She looked at me. "When?" she said. "I don't know exactly," I said. "I had several versions prepared." "Versions," she said. "I'm an architect," I said. "I work in iterations." She looked at the recipe box. Then at me. The full smile, the whole arrival. I got there first, she said. You did, I said. With breakfast, she said. With breakfast, I said. It was extremely effective. She had gotten there first. She had been patient for 7 months, and had gotten up on a Saturday, and made the things she had been waiting to make, and had said the 7 words, and that had been that. The file opened. The sequence completed. The right order observed. 2 years later, when people asked how it started, I told them. She made me breakfast. I always said it plainly because the plain version was the whole story. She always added, he hadn't eaten properly in 7 months. I always said, that's not what it was about. She always said, I know. I said it anyway. That was a reasonable summary of who she was and why it worked. She knew the true version, and she also knew when the gentle version was the right version to offer, and she held both with the same ease she held most things. The recipe card is still in the box. I asked her once if she was going to retire it, now that the recipe had been made. She said, I keep all the cards. Even the ones I've used, she meant. Especially those. What would you have done? Would you have said those 7 words? Or would you have kept getting up early and finding other reasons? And have you ever kept something you planned to do for someone, a small thing, and found out later they had been noticing you noticing them the entire time? Tell me in the comments. If this one felt quiet in the right way, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.